We're so excited, everybody, because Spark is back for a limited run engagement in November.
Yeah, we are so excited. We had a great run in July. We heard from a lot of people that they want more. So we are happy to let you know that we've added 3 shows, November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. The performances will take place in Norwalk, Connecticut at an amazing venue. It's the personal studio and performance venue of an incredible artist named 5ivefingaz. And the venue is called the Art Monster Studio. We will put the ticket link in our bio as well as on our website, woowoointherealworld.com. You won't want to miss this production, and we hope to see you there. My joy is her joy, is his joy, and our joy to share. So welcome back to Woo Woo in the Real World. We are in the midst of season 4 here, and it's our Spark season where we are diving into the topic of if you've ever had a moment in your life where a spark has infiltrated it, right? So your life was humming along, and then all of a sudden something happened. It could be something that's really great that you weren't expecting. Or it could be something that is a loss or a tragedy or a challenge. Insert any adjective there. But one thing is for certain with a spark moment, it changes the trajectory of your life. So these conversations this season have been so great because they're leading up to a limited engagement and an amazing run that we're having the first weekend of November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And I'm so excited, Becki, about our guest today.
Oh, I am super pumped because this is my first experience of chatting with 5 and really kind of getting into the zone of his creative genius and where he's going to be hosting the next run of Spark. So I am super pumped up about this.
Yes. So we are going to be having a run of Spark at a place in Norwalk, Connecticut called the Art Monster Studio. And it was kind of a woo-woo experience as to how and why we are having our next run at this very cool space. But I have been following 5ivefingaz on social media for quite some time now, and we're gonna dive into that. But the space, Art Monster Studio, is the personal art studio, and it also has a performance space in it of the artist. And he's such a visionary, and he's a designer, and he's just such the coolest dude with the biggest heart. And I'm so excited that he said yes. A, that the space was available for the first weekend of November.
Yep.
And B, that he said he would be, and you didn't know this, and I think I realized this right before I hit join the Zoom. Becki, I think he's our first male guest on this podcast. But without
Huge was the only other male guest. We've had one male guest.
A sound guy, but totally different.
Yeah. But still rare. This is a rare sighting, everyone.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I mean, that intro. I think we're done here.
Gentlemen, 5ivefingaz.
Yeah.
That was awesome intro. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and chat with you.
Yes. So welcome to the show. You have no idea what you have signed up for in this conversation.
I don't. I didn't even ask one single question about it, did I? I just said okay.
You did not. So I guess I did okay in my first meeting with you. Scare you off. But 5, first of all, you were born and raised in Norwalk, Connecticut, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And as I mentioned, you're a graffiti artist and muralist, right?
Yep.
But that you didn't start out that way, right? And you're very well known in our local community for not only for your artwork, but just how involved you are with kids and people in general. So why don't you give folks, just paint a little background for us of
Pun intended.
Yeah.
Exactly. Couldn't help myself. Yeah, but tell us about
no, absolutely. I got my start very young. I was like in kindergarten. I was probably like 4 or 5 or 6 years old. Just by looking at like Sunday comics, like, that back then it was like, newspapers were bigger than they are now, but like just from watching my dad read the newspaper at the table, and the colors and everything would attract me as a little kid. And then, back then it's not like we had phones to scroll on or anything. So everything was popping off, like advertising wise, like the cereals. Like I would sit there and stare at the cereal box and look at all the lines on all the like, Tony the Tiger and like whatever, like cartoon was on there. And then same thing with the Sunday comics. And I would just watch, like I would see like the family circus and like different comics, and I would always be intrigued by that at that young of an age. And so then I started just drawing and sketching, and I was a very shy kid, and just very anxious kid. So I kept to myself in that aspect. I would draw to kind of just, I would entertain myself with that, so I got into it more, and I started seeing cartoons, and we didn't have iPads back then, or we didn't have anything like that. So what I would do is I would take a piece of paper and I would tape it to, I would record our cartoons like while I was at school, and then hit play and then hit pause whenever I saw a character I wanted to draw, and I would put the piece of paper, tape it to the TV, and I would kind of like outline it and sketch it and then color it in and then draw my own versions of them. So that kind of taught me how to draw certain figures and eyes and hands, and so that was essentially how I got my start at that young of age, from like 5 years old to like 8 or 9 and 10. I would do that. So I developed a passion for that, and then I started venturing off and creating my own characters and building off of what I knew. And then I don't know if you want me to go all the way till now, but you
Do
know,
I want to hear the whole 5 story.
Yeah, I do too, especially as a creative. I'm sitting here, I'm going,
Yeah.
you kind of knew. I mean, I think we all kind of know at the age of 5. And the funny thing is that you started there because that's where we like to start our guests.
right.
We always
Right.
ask them, like, tell us about 5-year-old you. So you went like naturally there. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's amazing that you were so intrinsically like it was there from the beginning, which I
yeah,
think it tends to be for most people. And then people tend to like lose it. Like I lost it and then I came back to it with my music. I'm
yeah,
curious like what your journey is. Did you hold
yeah.
on tight? Was this a through
Oh,
line through
yeah.
your whole
So no, I mean, adolescence happens, like
life?
my parents also put me in sports. So I played, baseball, basketball, I tried football here and there. But I was into sports a lot, and that got me more. That kind of also helped me get out of my shell, because I started developing friendships on the field, and that was another way of me like. And again, it's like I'm competitive, but like a healthy competitive. I'm not like, oh my God, like this is going to destroy my life, or like yelling at people, or if we lost, we lost. I'd take it hard. I'd take it to like the shower and just think about it, and then just let it run down the drain. But um, it was over, But so when I got into high school, like any other adolescent boy, like I started noticing girls, and I'm playing baseball, I'm playing basketball, so I'm trying to I knew I still wanted to do art somehow, because, I was in the higher art classes, but I didn't know how far that was going to take me. Like at that age, kind of, you're not thinking much further
Mhm.
than the next week or
Yeah.
something.
But I'm guessing though, based on what you're saying, I'm sure you had people around you, right? You just said you were in the higher art classes and stuff. I mean, people were probably noticing your talent, weren't
Yeah,
they?
100%.
They
Yeah,
talked
yeah, no.
about that,
And
people
so
trying to
like,
do it in one direction or the other at that point.
yeah, so I had in assemblies that I do a lot of the time. I speak about like kind of angels along your way. Like everyone has these angels in the way, like that kind of guide you. Yeah. That kind
Right.
of guide you, without either you want to or not knowing, indirectly, directly. So I talk about these three that I had, right? And it's funny because I think they were pretty much all within high school, but then also some in adulthood, but so like the first one was, freshman year, I came from like a private school. I thrown into a public school. So now like we had all this freedom, and so I skipped the class. I went to go, there was a basketball court like maybe like a few blocks from the school. So we went down there to play basketball.
Mhm.
Um, and I did it once, and then I did it again, and then like I was halfway out the door, and I tell kids all this all the time, because they're just like, ooh, and I was halfway out the door, and like the hall monitor, Mrs. Dunn, I remember her name, grabbed me by my arm and she was like, "Where are you going?" And my parents are always heavy on education and respect. And so it was out of character for me, but I knew I just wanted to go play basketball. I was gonna come back to class eventually, but like, I was getting into that bad habit. So she
Mhm.
grabbed me, she was just like, "You're coming with me." And mind you, like as a freshman, 14-year-old, I looked like I was 8 or 9. I looked extremely young. So she grabs me and she's just like, "Where are you going? Like, what are you doing?" And then she was like, "What's your name?" And then she hauls me off and she's like, I'm taking you to the principal's office." And this is like 2 weeks after I started high school. And I'm like, "Oh my God." So like I'm like fighting tears and just upset and like, and also knowing my friends made it out and they're over there playing basketball. But she's just like,
More
you know,
upset.
yeah. And then she was just like, "You don't want to start your high school career like this." And I was like, you know, in between being so nervous and scared, I was also angry because I got caught. And I'd be trying to be defiant. And we had a bad freshman class anyway. So I was just like trying to be defiant. And she was like, "I'm gonna talk to the principal. I'm gonna bring you in there and you're gonna be in trouble." And I think it was more of a scare tactic because I was scared and I knew she was gonna, well, as soon as they mentioned my mom and dad, of course it's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So she's just like, "Hey, like, um, so she goes in, I don't know what she really does, and then she comes back out, she sits next to me and she goes, 'I'm gonna watch you for the next 4 years. Like, I don't want you starting your high school career this way. Like, I'm gonna watch you for the next 4 years.'" And I was like, "Wow, okay." And then she was just like, "Now go." Like, she didn't tell the principal. I don't even think, like, in hindsight, like when I got older, I realized it wasn't even outside the principal's office, but I was only there for 2 weeks. I didn't know.
Uh-huh.
So she let me go, and I was just like, "Shit, I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing it again." And it
Didn't-
straightened me up. It straightened me right up. And so she was just like, "Hey, like, she kept her word. She went to everything that I like, even like, but obviously the freshman year, like basketball games and baseball games, like I would see her in the stands every once in a while. Uh,
Hmm.
and then I was just like, "Oh, she's really here." Like, oh my God. And
Wow.
then like by sophomore, junior year, kind of became friends with her. And then by my senior year, like there was already an understanding. Like she already knew that I was on a straight path. And so lo and behold, like long story short, she kind of pulled me in. And again, this was my senior year. I hadn't even applied to colleges yet. I didn't know if I was gonna go to college. I knew I wanted to do art somehow, some way. But it was just me hanging out with my friends and being like, "Oh shit, like I missed this deadline. I missed this deadline." Like, I'm not paying attention. And at that time I was going into like the Bronx and I was uh going into Bridgeport and learning graffiti through friends and cousins that were doing it. So, so my teacher, I mean, my counselor called me down and she was like, "Hey, like, I got good news for you." And I was like, "What?" She was like, "You won a scholarship." And I was like, "I won I was like, "I didn't enter for any scholarships." She was like, "You actually won 2 scholarships." And I was like, "How?" And she was just like, she said, "You'll find out, during the ceremony." And then lo and behold, I found out right before the ceremony that Miss Dunn had given me a scholarship in the name of her son's name who had passed away from
Oh,
cancer
wow.
because of, and she did a speech and it made me cry. And it was like my characteristics reminded her of her son in some sort of way. And it wasn't much and it wasn't about that. And I tell kids this all the time, where it was $250 to an 18-year-old. Of course, that's a lot of money, but like overall, in hindsight, like it's not. You could buy one book maybe
Right.
nowadays, but it was a belief that she had
Yeah.
it that was
That's right.
that you can't quantify. It was like the belief of me, and I was like, wow, like. And then I did one from an advertising marketing company that kind of knew that I was thinking about going into graphic design. So they gave me like a $1,500 one, which was awesome because that helped me buy, books and helped me pay for my initial classes. But it was hers that meant the most and stuck with
Yeah.
me to
Mhm.
now, you know.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
and I always said if I was ever in a position to give back in that way, I would. And that's why I started like the Love More Than Ever Scholarship Fund to help kids. And it was because of her, And I recently, like maybe like 2 years, 3 years ago, I put a call out on social media because I wanted to thank her again or, you know, in a, you know, when you're 18, everyone that's older than 25 looks old.
Yeah.
I didn't know her real age. I didn't know, you know, what, you know, where
Yeah.
she was. And then a reporter from News 12 reached out and he was like, dude, like, I want to follow this story. Um, and then some woman chimed in and said that she had passed away, unfortunately.
Aw.
Her husband had passed away, unfortunately, and she had a son who had passed away previously, you know,
Right.
before, and then
Yeah.
her daughter had passed away. And I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
So I was like, there's no one I can thank, like no one I can talk
Mm.
about this. Like, I would love to talk, you know, I don't know if she has any grandchildren or anything. Like, I would love to talk to somebody that's directly connected to her. So that was a big push for me, you know, and I was like, all right, this woman had a belief in me. Like, I kind of have to believe in myself now, you know.
Right.
So that kind of, you know, and again, you know, pre that, you know, with sports, I kind of let art fall by the wayside a little bit because I was more into the flashy life and being you know, a varsity athlete, and that kind of snapped it back in for me. And I was like, so then the second one falls in line right after her, which was my art teacher, my senior year art teacher, where she was like, you are not like a cookie cutter like artist. Like, you play a lot of sports, you excel in sports, and some artists don't do that. Some artists just want to focus on art. You know, you don't, you know, you have different styles of art and you don't know what you want to kind of do. And then I kept telling her I just wanted to be a starving artist in New York City. Like, I just wanted to go to New York City and be a starving artist. And she was like, can I just give you a bit of advice? There's this thing called graphic design, aka like commercial art, is what they used to call it back in the day. And she was like, it involves computers, and you still can be creative. So just maybe you want to do that to pay the bills, but then you can paint on the side. I took her advice word for word, word for word.
Mm.
I was like, that's a great idea. So that's what I went to school for. And then that's
So
kind of what I went to school. Yeah.
where did you go?
So I went to NCC. I went to NCC because I went to play basketball there. And then I went to NCC for more than I was supposed to be there. Because again, I got into college. I was into DJing and making music. I also didn't realize the freedom that you had going into college where you're like, oh my God, they're going to call my parents. They don't care. You're paying for this, so they don't care if you go or you don't.
Right.
That's right.
So my friends would call me up and they're like, hey, let's go to the Bronx, let's go to Brooklyn and go buy records. And I was like, yeah, let's go. So I would just miss class. I'm like, no one's calling the house. Like, this is awesome. But then like my first semester was a complete, I think I had like a 1.4 or something like that. And I was, holy shit.
Mhm.
Um, uh,
Now,
so I was like, okay, like, you know, I signed up for graphic design classes, and then basketball came calling again. They had a team forming, and I was like, I signed me up, like, I want in, you know. And
Mhm.
then, you know, I tried out, I made it, I made the team, and then we went from there. And we were playing, you know, region, like all over northeast, down south a little bit, but it was just like, I was like, oh, this is awesome, like, I'm back. So again, like, you know, it was like I was going for graphic design, I was playing basketball, I was like winning at the moment. And then lo and behold, you know, like, my girlfriend at the time found out she was pregnant. And then I said, oh. So
yeah.
I know
So
now I have to
that's what
tell
we call a spark moment.
Right.
this. That is, that is. And
You're
then I
moving
said,
along, you're trying to figure things out, and
yeah,
uh-oh.
just a kid myself. And I was like, oh, so then that snaps you back to reality. I'm like, you know, it talks to with two schools for scholarships to transfer. And then I was like, you know, I can't be chasing this dream out because I always wanted to be in the NBA. And I was like, I can't be chasing this dream to be in the NBA. Because not that it matters, but you know, I'm like 5'8", 5'9", and on a good day. And I was just like, you know, I would have to work extra hard. Like, this is what I would have to focus on in my life. And I was like, with a baby coming in, I can't do that. You know, and I always said to myself, um, I would, you know, if I had a kid, I would always be 100% there. Uh, so kind of just let the basketball be, and started focusing back into art, and like, all right, now I got to get into a career. And really
Mhm.
make it work because I'm not living for myself. I'm living for her now.
Right.
So sure enough, like I just hit the books and I finally graduated. I think it was like 4 or 5 years at a 2-year college. But like I took some time off when my daughter was
You did
born
it your
too.
way. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And then that's another big message that when I do assemblies is everyone has their own timeline, you know, and
Hmm.
it's not how you start, it's not how you finish, it's how you finish. So, you know, I ultimately started going, I was like, all right, I got to go to 4-year school, but I don't want to go too far. So I went to Sacred Heart. I applied to Sacred Heart twice. I got rejected twice because my grades weren't the best, you know. I think I had like I graduated with like 2.2 and it was like 2.7 minimum or something. So I
Okay.
kept applying and I was like, you know what? I'm driving to the school. So I said, I'm driving to school. I'm talking to someone. So I drove to the school. I went to an admissions office and I was like, I want to talk to someone because I feel like I can succeed in this school, but I'm not being let in for some reason. So I went there and they put me in the office with some sort of dean. I don't remember his name, but
Mhm.
I pleaded my case. I showed him my transcripts. I was like, I'm not the best. I wasn't. I said I'm smarter than what the paper shows. I'm a lot smarter than what the paper shows. That was just me being lazy, me just
Playing basketball.
just coasting, you know. And like my teachers would always tell my parents were if he were to like do his homework and and like
Oh,
study, he would be a straight A student
right.
because I would get like B's and C's and the A here and there.
Mhm.
So, you know, I convinced him. He was like, all right, I wouldn't leave. So he was like, all right, let's do this. He was like, let's work out a schedule for you for one semester. And he goes, you have to maintain a 3.5
Oh,
in order
wow.
to stay here. And I knew me because again, like I going back to I'm more competitive with myself, not with
Oriented.
other people. And I'm just like, I could do this. I could do this. So I hit the books. And then that semester I had a 3.7. And I went to him and I was like, am I open to like register for more classes? Because so they admitted me into the school full time and I went there and I ultimately ended up graduating from there.
Mhm. Nice.
Um, and I was like, you know, I didn't even want to go to college at the beginning of the whole trip. So you know, after
Yeah.
I graduate, now it's the real world, you know, yeah, now I have to find a job. So through a friend, I applied to different places and I got into this marketing agency that was kind of a startup, but it was just getting going.
In
So like,
Connecticut City.
yeah, yeah. So they were in the Merit 7 building in Norwalk, and I started working there and like as a freelancer. And then like it took 2 years to hire me just because, you know, funding, because they were trying to, I still had to prove myself. And out of college, you really don't know anything about the corporate world like you thought you did, you know. You
Mm.
still think you had you for jobs, you think you had 2, 3 weeks for a job where it's like, oh no, we need this by tomorrow. And you're like,
Yeah.
so the turnaround pace, everything, you know, and then I just got in that world and I again, you know, challenging myself. I'm like, I'm gonna be one of the best designers ever. Like, you know, and then I just started like going on blogs and getting books and studying on my own and learning different techniques, learning all kinds of crafts, you know,
Mhm.
and all that to say like my painting just kind of just fell off. And like to your point,
Mm.
like, you know, you kind of stopped and I just stopped being creative. That with the, you know,
Baby.
3-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. It's like taxing. And I was just like, the last thing I want to do after being in a brainstorm for 3 hours is come home and be creative. So
Right.
that just fell by the wayside. And I was like, oh my God, like, you know, and I just completely just, I would come home, fall asleep, you know, do it again, do it again.
Yep.
That's right.
And when I talk to, you know, when I say this in assembly, I'm like, you know, not that there's anything wrong with that, with balance and just being consistent, you know, because, but for me, it was eating at my soul because I was like, I
Mm.
feel like I could be doing much more with my creativity. And I just kind of fell into this thing of being anxious again and
Mm.
very uh I had insomnia like you wouldn't believe, like I couldn't sleep um and then it's just depression again and you know and I had to be my best self for my daughter, but then it's hard as a parent when you're in that mental state to be your best version of yourself for your kids, you know, because you have to put on that mask kind of thing, you know,
Yeah.
and be strong, you know, and be strong for the kids. But then, you know, at nighttime you're crying or you're just like
Right.
depressed or so I was like, something's got to change here because I don't know what, you know, and you know, you know, you feel chained to the job because it's insurance for my daughter, paying for her, you know, schooling. So I was like,
Mhm.
oh my God, like there's no way out. There's literally no way out.
Right. Then you start
So
to think about these, you know, worst case scenarios too, right? I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
you feel so trapped and locked in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Oh yeah. And it's just like it's funny because if you're not in it, you know, and some people could just say easy, yeah, especially like the older generation can be like, oh, just shake it off, just walk it off. Oh, we are tough. Oh,
you
and
don't
it's
know how lucky you are.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not that easy, you know, like,
Right.
you know, so, you know, I kind of just like went through the motions for about 10 years. And
Mm.
then I think, and I kind of told you this, Sammy, like, was, it was like, that was another like spark moment. And like my third angel, as you would say, like, as I would say was, I was like at home and there was this group that they were very talented, but they played a lot of kid instruments. They played to make their music. It was like very creative music. And it was two sisters. They were called Coco Rosie. And I liked a lot of the because coming from the music world and production world too, like I liked what they were doing. And I was like, oh my God, this is infectious. Like I love this. So through someone through a website or something like that, I found out that they were doing a feminist uh art show in the Lower East Side. And I was like, well, like I love I love this group. And I want to see what this is all about. But you know, I recently started sketching again and kind of painting, and I was like, I'm gonna do one painting for them of the group and kind of bring it to them. And I was like, all right, like I'm gonna totally do it. I'm gonna just leave it in there and then leave. And I kind of just drew this abstract. Well, it wasn't abstract, it was just kind of abstract, raw style of their faces and like their group, like just their vibe that they give off. And I said, all right, you know, I said the day, I was like, all right, this is opening night. I'm gonna leave work early. I'm gonna tell my supervisor that I have because and in the meantime, like I went back to grad school. I don't know. My daughter saw a
Oh, and
billboard.
by the way, oh,
My daughter saw a billboard. Like I was taking her home. She was living with her mom in Bridgeport at the time, and I was taking her home. And she was like, you should do that. And I was like, I'll look into it. So I tripped back into grad school from someone that didn't even know if he wants to go to school. So I was like, I'm gonna skip my class again, full circle.
uh-huh.
I'm gonna leave work early. I'm taking the train into New York City and I'm gonna drop this painting off. And mind you, it's like a 24 by 36 painting. So I wrapped it like in like craft paper and I just, you know, carried it with me and I'm hauling this thing across the Lower East Side. And I'm like, whatever, like it's New York. Like you feel like you see that everywhere. So I'm just like, I'm waiting to get in and I get in and no one questions me about the painting, you know, and I'm just holding it and I'm waiting for my moment to put it on the wall. Mind you, there's just like B-list celebrities around me, and I'm just taking it all in because for the past 10 years, I've just been work, home, work, home. So now I'm on the Lower East Side and I'm like taking this art world in again. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
exciting. Like, this is awesome. Um, so you know, I go in there and finally I'm like drinking champagne to try to get my nerve. And I finally find like a sweet spot on the wall to hang it up. And I came with like the 3M like Velcro stuff. And I'm like, all right, this is it. This is it. And someone
You
kept
were gonna hang
coming.
it up with the paper on it, or you
No,
took,
no, no, no. I was gonna do it all in one fell swoop, take the paper off and hang it up.
wow,
So
that's
so
a
I was
baller
like,
move.
yeah, so I did it. I threw it in the trash to the paper, and then someone walked in, so I had to hold it back down, and then finally I got it up, and then I just like booked it out of there. And then I was like, just like out of curiosity, I was like, wait, like night is so young. Like, why don't I just enjoy the party now after I was like so anxious and nervous? So I said, I'm gonna go grab another champagne. So I walked in and I started noticing people looking at the painting. And I was just like, oh, this is awesome. And I never shown before because right out of college, while I was looking for a job, I was always trying to show my artwork to galleries. And it was just rejection after rejection after rejection. And it's like, no, like, you know, we don't like paintings like that or like that's not our style or this is too normal, you know, or stuff like that I would get. And so I just put the painting up, and then I went back, listened, you know, I was watching and it was fun. And then I left. And then, you know, I wrote my hashtag because this was like 2014. So hashtags were a thing, but they were just getting started. No one knew exactly what the function was. So I wrote my hashtag, but I spelled it wrong. And so I was like, there's no way that anyone's gonna ever, I never signed it. I didn't put any messaging on it. So I was like, there's no way anyone's gonna find this or get back to me. So like 2 weeks later or a week later, like I'm on the page for the show and everything, and I see a picture of my painting. And on the description, it said, if anyone knows who did this, contact us. So I was like, oh shoot. I was like, oh no, I'm in trouble. And I was like, so I shot like a direct message. I was like, oh, just by the way, it was me, it's a gift. I did it for the group. It was a total gift. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disrespect anything. They're like, absolutely not. Like, we love it. Like, this is awesome. This is awesome that you did that because it's so different from anything else that anyone's done. Like, this is awesome. So I was like, oh, cool. So they invited me to be part of the official opening. And they told me to come down, and I still was skeptical because I was like, is this like, are they setting me up? Am I getting so like I went in and they were very accommodating. Like they gave me t-shirts, they let me in, they comped my, you know, entry, and like the group was there, Coco Rosie was there, like I took a picture with them and they thanked me for the and then it just I got accepted into like this whole their whole world, and it was just like different, like, you know, backgrounds and just
Yeah.
um beliefs, and just, you know, like, and they welcome me, you know, and I,
Wow.
being in Connecticut for the last 10 years, just working a corporate job, like this was like eye-opening to me because it was
Yeah.
like it
I
was
want
a
to pause there just for a
yeah, yeah,
quick moment because, I mean, first of all, the way in which you just continually, regardless of like what was going on in your life from a young age, right? To when you started sketching and drawing characters and being inspired by the comics, to, you know, your whole journey with school and sports, and then becoming a dad at an early age, and then having to get this job. The thing that is so striking in your story is how you authentically just kept following your heart, right? And I know in that 10-year chunk, you probably felt like you weren't, but
hmm
somehow, I mean, you know, the way in which you broke out of that was you made a painting and you infiltrated this art community on the Lower East Side. Like, your spirit is just this force, right? And like, kudos to you for leaning into that and
Yeah.
following, right?
yeah, no, thank you so much.
That's, you know, that's such, for people listening to you right now, and I'm sure, you know, not only the assemblies that you do in schools for kids, but just, you know, adults in general, like, we need to be inspired, right? I mean,
Right.
social media has done so much to isolate and just drown out our own heartbeat, right? That we don't know anymore, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
go to like Sacred Heart and say, like, I'm not leaving this school until you admit me, right? I mean,
Yeah.
say that would probably be afraid to do that because
Yeah,
of being, you know, canceled or whatever, shamed on social media, right? So people don't
yeah,
take those risks today, right? I mean, not to generalize, but I think it just creates this fear that nobody wants to deal with, right? But
right.
you fought through that, and you fought for what you wanted, and I think that's so inspiring.
hmm
Yeah.
No, yeah, I
What
appreciate it.
I love too about that whole moment of you describing of putting up the painting. I mean, to me, that is like, whoa, like that is
Yeah,
bold, 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 right? To
yeah,
kind of, but you offered it was a gift. I mean, you weren't putting
yeah,
that painting up to try to hijack their show or to like
right.
ease your way into something. Is because it was somebody that you really admired. It was a group, like you said, that was doing stuff that you thought was amazing. And then this was something you wanted to give from your heart to them.
Yeah.
Was it one of your, so just for the audience who may not be familiar with your style and your work, so was it one of your paintings that you do with your hand of people's faces, and
No,
it
and it's
wasn't that style?
no, it wasn't. It was more colorful and it was like a like kind of abstract, but you could tell it was a takeoff one of their like press photo pictures that I did. And I kind
Mm.
of implemented it, and it was like a freeing experience, you know, because this was one of the first times where I wasn't painting like a still life or like something else. You know, I kind of just went with it. And I was like, I'm just gonna feel it out and just go with it, you know,
I
and
love that.
a
Love
freeing
that.
moment, you know.
What's also beautiful about that is you spoke about the rejection after rejection after rejection, right? And it's,
Mhm.
you're not our style, and no,
Yep.
um, and so you do this crazy bold move, right? Also very clever, right? Because
Mm.
again, your spirit was not going to be denied,
Right,
right?
right, right.
And look what happened. I mean,
Yeah.
this entire community opened up their hearts and arms to you and
Oh
said,
yeah, absolutely.
you felt that
Mhm.
connection, like
Yeah.
this is who I am, right?
Yep.
That felt
Yeah.
good, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, we've spoken about this in other shows about frequency and energy, right?
Yep.
And it needed to be a match, right? So you're
Mhm.
Hmm.
trying to fit into all these other places, right? Where their frequency wasn't a match for you and your frequency wasn't a match for them, but you
Right.
just buzzing around,
Yeah.
right?
No. Yeah.
Doing your thing. And then all of a sudden it was like, match. Here's a
Yeah.
match right here.
Yeah. Yeah. And it
Such a beautiful
outside look
story.
outside looking in, and then you know, I didn't even mention I get to the part where it was like the official spark moment. I mean, I had several spark moments, but like
Yeah.
but it was like from the outside looking in, it, you know, like you see, and again, this was, you know, a feminist divinity like art show that like you had said, like I wasn't trying to hijack. It was more like I was praising, you know, and kind
Mm.
of like I didn't want it to be about me, you know, this masculine energy come in there and be like, oh, it's about me, you know, like it was
Mhm.
more like praising what they were doing because I was so inspired, you know, that, you know, ended up going into the show, and like there was like the third angel, you know, I'm sitting there, I'm like I have like a water in my hand, and you know, I'm just taking it all in. Like there
Mhm.
was performances. Marina Ambrakovich was there. There was a couple other big names in that, you know, in the world of art. And I'm just like watching it, taking it in, and you see like this woman, like an all white, like just seems like now replaying it, seems like she was floating, but she wasn't, you know, she was just, so she stopped at my piece and we kind of just struck up conversation, and she was like, hey, you know, like, you know, this is awesome that you did. Like I heard about this piece and it's pretty cool, you know, and I was like, oh, thanks. And then I kind of asked her what her deal was because she was just like wrapped in all this white, and like, and I thought maybe because it was like body painting, so I thought maybe she was either an artist or like some sort of canvas kind of thing that was gonna happen. And she was like, you know, I'm a yogi, and again, coming from the corporate world that I've been in 10 years, like I didn't know what that was. You know, I know what yoga was, but I didn't know, you
Sure.
know, so I was just like, oh, cool. So we started talking about meditation, and I was like, hey, like you know, I've been in the corporate world, like I'm suffering from anxiety, from depression, from insomnia. Like I try to meditate, like I even, you know, I just had bought my house. And I try to make a meditation room, which to this day is, you know, there's paintings in there. We still call it meditation room, but not so much. But
Right.
so I tried everything. You know, I try spiritual stuff, started getting into that world. And she was just like, hey, like you're an artist. And I was like, yeah. She was like, that meditation is not for everyone. Like your meditation and your art. And then
Mhm. Yeah.
I told her I hadn't painted really in 10 years. Like this was one of my first paintings that I've done in a while. So she was like, do this for me. She was like, go home. She was like, you can text me, you can send me an email, go home, paint and just keep painting until you get tired and fall asleep, or paint until you solve a problem, or paint till you're happy, or paint until your problems that you thought were big problems are gone. Just keep painting.
Mm.
She was like, that's your way out. You don't have to do anything with the paintings. You just paint like whatever you're feeling. It doesn't have to be something for a gallery, just paint. So I went home on those instructions and I haven't stopped. And this has been another 10 years since
Mm.
then. I haven't stopped since then, you know. So painting, I mean, obviously I go through spurts, you know, when I'm busy. But like since then, I haven't stopped painting, where it's like I was doing 5, 10 a night, like just even on the cardboard or whatever like substrate I had or whatever, medium I had, I was using that. And I was going from, chiming back to my graffiti days to my fine art days to everything. And it was just like it was almost like that part in the movie. And that's what a spark is like when the weather vane kind of spins and it's like you're headed in another direction or what's coming. And it was kind of like that moment where I was like, oh, this is what it is. And like I get
Oh.
goosebumps because
Amazing.
I
Yeah,
was like,
I'm just listening to this.
I
It's
was
just
like, oh my God. So then I just kept painting. It was words, stuff that I heard like when I was like catching it. Cause I was after that, like I was going in and out of New York City. So just phrases I heard overheard people talking to each other, like words, just started, putting them together. And from the graffiti world, that's what you did. You had your name, you tag your name, it was all word based. But then now I was like, you know what? I'm gonna paint for myself. Like all those years of trying to get in the gallery. So the first painting I did was I flipped over the painting and it said, "Do not tell me how to paint," or something like that. And it was on the back of the canvas.
yeah, I love that.
And I started just painting words. I started painting for myself. And that's when I saw the change happen, where I was like, I'm just painting for myself. Like I'm not when I feel a painting's done, I'm walking away. Like I would just rip them off and then paint something else.
Yeah.
And I would look at the other one, and that was kind of like the thing that I would do is like mandalas, like
Yes.
you build all this perfection up and then you just mess it all up, and for me, like letting go of that freedom in that moment was like the best feeling because I was like, this is it. This is who I am.
Yeah.
um and
I love that.
and I would just paint and paint and paint. And and then it got to a point where my crawl space, my upstairs was all filled with paint. And I started hashtag called My Gallery is Outside. And I was like, I'm just gonna give these paintings away for free. And so that's what I started was a scavenger hunt. And I would bring these paintings out, hang them up everywhere because I was too old to get arrested for graffiti. It's like that. So I would just create galleries everywhere I went. And took the trip out to New Mexico to Santa Fe to visit to see some artists. And I went out there not knowing anyone, but half of like them from Coco Rosie from that art show lived out there. So I just
Ah,
went out there and
I
just
was
kind
gonna
of
say, how did you get interested in that particular region? But it was
yeah.
from
Yeah,
Rosie.
meditation, desert, the just getting involved in that world. And like these
Mhm.
became like, quote unquote, like they were, they call themselves, like Wiccans and witches, and there's like protective spells and stuff like that. And like they took me under the wing as far as like creativity and just being like, hey, like you're part of family now, like this is burn some sage and some Palo Santo and like, take it in
Burn
and just,
some shit, as we like to
yeah,
say.
yeah. And then just be like, hey, like all of a sudden I'm out there and I'm taking in uh art from other, artists that are older. Like I went to the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum and that was amazing. And just seeing stuff like that, it kind of inspired me. And um it's after that, like I haven't been the same. Like it just brought out this positivity. I've always been a positive person, but
Yeah.
That's amazing. And just in terms of like we haven't met that long ago, right?
yeah.
But um, everything that you're saying and just sort of everything that you're about, again, it's just, like that woman in that gallery that day that was all dressed in white. When I met you, it's like I just felt that about you. I'm like, this dude has such radiant energy, right? And just this calm spirit. And what was great was, and I already kind of like felt that way anyway, but some people create a persona just for social media, right?
Right.
And for commercialism, right? But
Mm.
that wasn't you. Like your genuine spirit, your genuine heart is like bam right there the second you like
Yes.
say hi and smile. And so getting back to spark for a moment, and because Becki, there's another one that you got to hear from this guy, but it's just amazing. But what you were just talking about in terms of it's about loving more than ever and the human spirit, right? even though you started that in 2016 and we're sitting, it was 2016, you said, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we're sitting here, 2024, some chunk of time later, it still resonates. And what's happening, that first weekend of November in your space, the Monster Studio, where we're having, a production of people telling their real stories, right? About their spark moment, all of the things that you said, the connective tissue, it was somebody else's light that kept your light lit, right? And that's what this experience is about. That's what, this podcast is about. It's about, illuminating how people, it's the human experience to have these dark times, right?
Yeah.
It's our way to, be attracted to basketball or going DJing or,
Yeah.
trying to just like figure your, life out and yourself out. And then shit happens,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If we don't
Yeah.
tell each other these stories, right, of how we went through something and then we came out on the other side, then darkness wins, right? And
Yeah.
that's not good for anybody.
Right.
No. And when you were telling that, something that really popped out to me in that story, when you were talking about the yogi who told you to go home and just paint, and you said the more that you just kept painting, the better you kept feeling. And
Yes.
it was interesting to me because it's almost like we are given the medicine. It's like we have the unique formulation for each
Right.
one of us, right? Like painting wouldn't have done it for me. Coming
Right.
home and playing on my guitar would have done it for me, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so for each person it's different, but I do think it's that we have it's kind of built into the DNA. And when you ignore it, when you don't make time for it or you ignore the whispers, you're not giving yourself those vital nutrients that you need to kind of replenish yourself and to renew your soul. And the way that you said you just kept painting for yourself and you just kept doing the things that resonated with you, even those words that came out, love more than ever, you said it just came from you, from inside. You said it's how I've always been. It
Yeah.
felt so authentic and so true. And that's where there's like a perennial truth and a perennial wisdom in it because it resonates so deeply with so many people over such a long span of time. And I feel like it is a timeless phrase.
Yeah.
So I
And
think it's like it's all innate, it's all within inside of us. And just sometimes it just takes another person to say, like, hey, you got it. It's right there. Or to
yeah.
hear somebody else's story to be like, wait a minute, I might
Yeah.
have it too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I'm so protective of it. And it's just like a matter of, you know, when people call it a logo or when people say, oh, your phrase, I'm like, no, it's like what I live my life by. But at the same time, I don't want it to become a live, laugh, love kind of thing where it ends up a
Right.
TJ Maxx, like, because it's not what it's more the words, it's more what's behind the words, right?
yeah.
It's the movement behind it where it's like something that I live. It's not like, here, put on a t-shirt and take it with you. You know,
Exactly.
like I put on a t-shirt because I make those t-shirts. So each one I believe is like has some sort of power behind it, you know, where
Mhm.
like, and I, you know, so I don't know if you guys know, but like, you know, like in 2019, like a friend of mine kind of sent me because art is always there, right? And then this kind of is equal to art, but it's funny because it's like my art is almost secondary, but it's not. But it's like art helps push the love more than ever, you know, aspect to it. So it's like this whole dynamic.
I
Right.
love it. It's like an
Like
infinity loop. It's
yeah,
like,
so part of
yeah.
my galleries outside thing is like I would put it on t-shirts, not necessarily, you know, that message itself. I put a lot of messages on, but then I started doing love more than ever, and I would leave them in random places so people can find them.
Mm.
Mhm.
Because I felt like if someone went out, left their house in the comfort of their own, like, and sometimes it was at night, like at 9 o'clock, and found a piece of artwork or found a t-shirt, then they deserve it. That they really wanted it. You know, that's almost better than
And for
the
them.
financial status, you know, getting paid for it because it's like
Yeah.
this person went, found it in the middle of the night and brought it home. And like, this is awesome.
Yeah. So Becki, what questions do you have? Because I want you to be able to jump into the conversation.
Well, it's funny. I don't have like a ton of questions because I've just so enjoyed. I've been so enraptured with
Oh, he's a great storyteller, right?
right with the story and just, but also seeing the thread. And I love hearing people's stories about when they when they do follow the whispers and they act on it and they get after it and what that does to transform their life. And so it seems like it has really transformed your life. And even in that story you just told, it seems whenever you transform your life, you then look for ways that it can help transform other people's lives as well. So you have a lot of things going on at the studio and in your art world now that has a lot to do with kids, has a lot to do with community. And so I'm just kind of curious, you know, have you made the jump totally? Like, are you still in the corporate thing and doing all this
Oh
as a
no,
side? Or
no, no,
you're
I'm not in
totally,
corporate
you've
world.
totally moved
Yeah.
on,
Yeah, no,
been able to make that.
I'm doing this full time. I do a lot of assemblies, I do a lot of mural work. I do freelance here and there though with friends and because I still do it. I still love doing graphic design. I do all my stuff, all my design. I do web design. So I do that, but I'd like to have it open where I'm like, no, I can't do this for the next week because I have art show or I have something, where I kind of
On your turn.
bought my time back where it's just like I love doing it. And sometimes consult, where I'm just like they bring me on for logo development or like, corporate stuff, but it's more on my terms where
Right.
now I have my own insurance. I pay for my insurance, so I don't have to be tied down to anything. But it's just like, I come in and out of places like, like I'll get a contract for like a year work or something like that, but I always stipulate and excuse me, most people know me now that love more than ever means so much to me that I always say, hey, I'll work with you, but like if I have an art show, if I have an assembly, if I have something, like I'll make sure I'll get it done, your work done, but I can't be, I'm not jumping on calls here and there, like, so
I love that.
most people know that already. So I come in like a consultant kind of thing and just kind of, I'll take on clients too on my own. So I'm not like 100% in. I'm not like 100% out, but like, I can get up in the morning and just kind of hang out for a little bit, go into the studio, paint if I have to do that, or just consult or paint a mural, or go in and talk to 1,200 kids about love more than ever, or host a mom's book club at my studio and which is a big part of it, which watching adults being kids again is huge because I feel like not mentally, obviously, but like I'm still like in the kindergarten phase of my life where it's like create.
Amazing. I mean, that is a blessing, right? That is a
Yeah.
blessing and a gift.
Yes.
Because
100%.
most people, they don't understand the power of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and we've talked about social media, the bads, but sometimes that's the good part of it that allows me to do that, where it's like free advertising and also just other people get to see what I do and spreading the word and
Oh yeah,
positivity. So
absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
that's the uptake of it.
Well, it connected us. I mean, that's how it works, right?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
The other thing that's super inspiring that I just want to touch on is, and I know Becki has this in her story, in terms of things that we've done before we actually sat down, got quiet with ourselves and said, what is it that I really want to do? What is this thing, right? And so for Becki, it was music, and for me, it was acting and performing, but really being a storyteller. Um,
Mhm.
but again, much to your like going around to galleries, right? So like the equivalent of my artistry and storytelling is you have to audition, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so basically you have to get very comfortable with being rejected as part of
Yeah.
daily life
Yeah.
every single time for that one yes, right?
Mm.
And then finally it's like, okay, well, you hum along and you do some things along that, in that area as an artist, but what are the things that I really want to do or say? And that's when spark happened, right? When I made
Yep.
some room to really and again, it was me thinking like I needed to tell my story, but I was like, no, I actually need to help other women tell their stories. That's where, and this intersection of healing arts as performing arts, like nobody's doing that. And so what? I'm just going to try it.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, and like you said, that's your spark. That's your, like your lane. And then to be able to reach out and help other women is, amazing in itself.
Took me
Yeah.
a lot longer to figure it out than you, but I'm just saying.
We all get there. He did start off by saying we all get there in our own time.
Yeah,
So,
All
everyone's
get
in their
there,
own timeline.
you know,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
can see though, looking back at my younger self, I was successful and I was trying to, again, but it was what success looked like or what it was supposed to look like, society's viewpoint of success,
right.
right?
And
Yeah,
then
totally different thing. Totally different
yeah,
thing than feeling
yeah,
that personal sense of fulfillment. And then when you have that, then you're working from a full cup that can just flow out and really be more
yeah,
abundant for
yeah,
everyone all around. That's kind of the thing that's weaving through, it weaves through so many of the stories is it's really not about you. It's about you sharing your gifts to help other people. So it's really like about what you have inside of you. Yes, does it heal you? 100%. But
yeah,
once we heal ourselves and once we do that for ourselves, we're so whole and full that it just flows out. And then that's really where the magic starts to happen, is when it
yeah.
really starts to help other people. So
And
that's
sometimes, sorry, and
no,
sometimes you feel like you're not. Sometimes you reach that. Sometimes that level, it feels like you're not even driving anymore. It's not like you're not in control. It's just the universe is making things happen, and you're just like, I don't know
Uh-huh,
what's happening right now, but I welcome
uh-huh,
it, and it's
uh-huh.
amazing. I'm just gonna go with it.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you're definitely a case study of that, right? Like Becky and I talk about that all the time. We call it, the unknown and letting go, right?
Mhm.
And that's, I think, what you just described, that feeling of letting go and letting the universe take over.
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
yeah, and it's a jump that is scary as hell, and it's just like, am I gonna? And I tell people this all the time. Sometimes you don't know you can do it until you're in the middle of it, and you're like, I'm doing it. Like, how am I doing
Yeah,
it? Like, this
yeah.
is amazing. And then you're like, oh my God. And then like I did an art show like 3 years. It was right after COVID, like, it was over, but it was like 2021. Um, but it was like I did an art show with some of my big pieces, and um, but in the room was this dark figure. I built this like 10-foot tall, almost like the Grim Reaper kind of thing, and it had a television for a face kind of thing, and it was just playing loops of just dystopian stuff
Mm,
was looming in the background of everyone's mind for being there for the art show was, all the bad stuff that just had happened. But that goes along with anything.
mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're riding high at any point, and then there's always that thought like I can crash at any point. Like the universe could just be like, oh, give me that.
Right, right.
So there's always that mentality and I think that's what kind of helps people survive sometimes.
Right, right. And that's the way you grow, right? I'm
Yeah,
sure
exactly.
moments. I mean, you're so fascinating to talk to. It's like,
Yeah.
Oh,
And the
thank
whole fear conversation, that whole like the tapes
we're
that we
gonna have
run in
to
our heads, and
we're
yeah.
gonna have
that's like a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
We didn't even hit because it's when you hear people's stories and you hear like that the highlights of like this great thing happened and then I put the thing up and that worked out and then that worked out and that worked out. What we're not getting into is just the bazillion
Yeah.
thoughts that you have and the moments of real like I'm not putting that up. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna put that t-shirt out there. I'm not gonna go do that because people will think it's stupid or they're gonna like
There's
all the
that.
things that run through your head and what you have to do to get over that is
Mhm.
so
Yeah. And everyone has
challenging.
that self-doubt and
right,
insecurities.
the inner critic, right?
Yeah. And then,
Do you have an inner critic?
oh, absolutely. And I have, what do you call that? Imposter syndrome, like crazy. Like
Oh,
sometimes I post it and I'm just like, who the hell do I think I am? And then other times I'm like, I deserve this. It's like it depends on the day. Like I'm like, you kidding me? I put so much work into this. I deserve this. Other times I'm like, who do I think I am? But
Yeah.
it's that's how it goes. And it's funny because it's like I
no.
think that's what keeps you in check.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what keeps a humble person humble is having that kind of slight fear and just and
Can
I
you
think
see the sign behind me?
no, I can't. But
Yes.
always,
Always stay humble and kind.
yep.
Um, so I just want to mention though, this space that you're sitting in, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Which I went to, you did that first ever art show, not that long ago, right? For the
yeah,
collect,
yeah.
right?
The collective, yeah. The group. I mean, you
So
kind of
this is an emerging artist collective that you've started in Norwalk. in this
Yep.
beautiful space. And so folks on video will be able to check it out, but just we'll link to it as well in the show. But just tell everybody a little bit about this and where they can find out more, and also come see and experience the space.
Yeah, so it is like um I opened it up as personal studios for artists because in my space, the Art Monster, people reached out, but it's more it's more like a warehouse environment where it's
Mhm.
dark. There's no natural light really. Like I supply all the lights in there. So when this place came about through Jason Milligan, he had said, I couldn't per se move my studio here because it's not accessible for some of the classes that I teach. But I said, hold on, like let me see if I can contact some of these artists that want spaces because there's artists always looking for spaces. So
Mhm.
instead of, hopefully not becoming an apartment or something like that, let's see if we can kind of, almost 5,000 square feet, turn it into like a collective of open space studios. And that stuck. And that was, again, friends of mine, they're like, "You're doing what?" And I'm like, I'm just gonna give it a shot and see because I feel like it's calling me. Like again, like
Mm.
sometimes the universe, you don't know what's working and or
Yeah.
what it's working on for you. And so I put the call out and people started coming. And like as of like this week I signed two more artists here, and it's really a space for themselves. And I tell them I'm like the middleman between the real estate agent and the landlord, and I just want them to focus on creating. And
Yeah.
also like I
But
told
it's
them,
an amazing community. Like, I remember walking into that
yeah,
space feeling
yeah.
like there's an amazing community
And,
here.
and and I didn't learn that until like we had potluck dinners for meetings every month, and like I think it was the second one, and like they all broke down how much the space means to them, and I was like,
Mm.
wow, like
Mhm.
that's touching because it's like and then two or three of the people that when they signed, they were crying because it was like
Mm.
okay to kind of express themselves, and they were just working out of their apartment, or they have a big family that they need a little space for themselves to come and work, and
Mhm.
now they feel official,
Right.
and it's been touching in that regard where it's like this is amazing that
Yeah.
like
And what's
it
this place called? Tell everybody what it's called.
called the 5 a.m. art studios. So, and that's
Okay.
because and on the website it says it, and it'll probably say it better
Oh,
than I could, but it's more like it's just you never know when creativity is gonna hit you. Like some days I'm going to sleep at 5 a.m., other days I'm waking up to do a painting at 5 a.m. And you never know. It's like so and it's 24-hour access. So it
mhm.
wouldn't be, 24 hour it wouldn't be called 5 a.m. if you didn't have 24-hour access.
Yeah. So is five the number five? Is that a woo-woo number for you? Does it mean anything?
It's
It
well,
seems
it started off when I was 12 or 13 because
okay. Not when you were
again,
five.
I was into DJing, and I was into uh record buying and making beats and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
a friend of mine who has since passed, we were at a store and he had said something about a 5 finger discount. He had dared me, and at the time I never heard that expression. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, he was like, you know what that is? He was like, that means like steal something. I'm like, I'm not stealing anything. Like, and then he was like, and then like we left the store and found out that he actually took something. Uh, so we would tease each other with the 5 finger discount and the 5 fingers. And then like when I started getting into beat making and DJing, that name stuck out. And I was like, it's perfect because I use my 5 fingers,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
use for mixing and everything.
Thinking and then
So
mixing.
14 years old, 15, like that name kind of stuck here and there. And
Mhm.
then I started when I was 18, I started a public access TV show called the 5 Fingers Hip Hop Showcase. And I filmed it in my parents' basement with like a friend of mine gave me an old school VHS recorder. And I remember filming like the first session. I had no editing
Mhm.
capabilities. I had no editing software. I just did it in one take for each and like rewound it, got the best takes and put it attached another VHS and got like the best clips. And I remember running it down to Cablevision and at the time, and they were just like, I played it for them, and it was just me, this 18-year-old kid with like a hoodie on and pants sagging, and just be like, hey, I got a couple friends of mine that rap. and we built this, little area in the corner of my parents' basement, and I want to show it to you guys, and maybe you guys could put it on the air. And I remember it was like a 23-minute episode, and it was like 5 different guys rapping, and like it was a 6 like older white men in suits, and it was me, and like I just kept sinking lower and lower, like every time there was a curse word, and I was like, oh man.
Like,
And
what
then they're just like, and then it stopped playing, and like the one guy turns to me and goes, I like it. He was like, he said, it's gonna have to be on late, like at 11:30 p.m. But I like it. I like the set. I like everything. And I was like, it's not a set. It's the actual corner of my parents' basement. But that was on for like 5 years. So like after that, like people just called me 5, and I think 5 itself is a very spiritual number in a holistic
that's why I was
level.
asking.
Has so many meanings. Like it's taken on more of just 5 fingers. So everyone calls me 5, and
Are we allowed
and
to know your real name?
yeah, oh yeah. My name's
Real-
Raphael, like the artist.
Raphael.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you are such a prolific artist in many different directions. And so it's going to be really exciting to be in your space in November for the Spark show.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get in there and feel it and to like
Yeah.
see what it's all about and to like soak in that energy.
Yeah,
Where can the good people of the podcast world find you online if they want to go check out your artwork, if they want to see a little hint of
So
the space before we
yeah,
get in there
so
live?
we have couple websites. I have lovemorethanever.com, THAN, because some people sometimes put E and they can't find it. And then I have Art Monsters, theartmonsterstudio.com, which showcases what we do at the studio. We have 5amartstudio.com. And then social media handles is just 5fingers. Like it's funny because when I do news articles or news interviews and they try to say the full name 5fingers, it's said different ways. So it's like my friends
say 5fingaz.
yeah. So it's like it's
What do you prefer?
5, just 5.
Just 5.
Okay. Even though the fingaz is in there.
Just 5 is always best way to go. And I have like a handle that says just call me 5 sometimes, but it's 5 is with the number 5,
Yep.
IVEFINGAZ. Just graphic design wise.
Nice.
Yes.
I started that way like when I was 14, 15, and I just kept it that way.
Yeah.
If it works, if it works, you keep it. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we'll link to all of that in the show notes so everybody can check you out. And please, I hope that everybody will come check you out and check out the space and everything live and in person, November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, when we've got Spark there live. It's going to be
fun.
Total vibe, a total.
Of course, we have some fun surprises with 5's blessing, which are going to
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel like this was a masterclass in how to be your authentic self.
Yeah.
So, thank
how
you.
to listen to and obey the whispers, right? Like you hit all the woo-woo points that we like to talk about.
Make that jump sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and your evening to chat with us. This is one that I'm going to be processing because like it's so multi-layered. And we didn't come at it from let's have a woo-woo conversation, but there's so much woo-woo in it that
I went there.
Yeah, because just naturally, but yes, 5, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was
Thanks.
Great. Yep.
On that note, we'll catch you on the other side.
Take care. Bye.